It's interesting that Mr. Adler yesterday talked about kind of the focus on the Harry Potter thing. Well, I'm gonna kind of bring in a little Clint Eastwood here. So I'm gonna talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And my passion, in, as Richard knows, and a lot of you know, in spine is artificial disc, and we're now in March going to be approaching 20 years of artificial disc at TBI. So what's good? I mean, you know, is there anything new? Is there anything to be excited about? And there actually is. If you weren't in the study, you guys haven't seen this disc yet, and they have a booth here, and this is the simplified disc, and it's a unique material of PEEK and ceramic. And from a results standpoint, you won't be surprised when the data comes out. It's probably going to get FDA approved, hopefully later this year. But what distinguishes it, and there's been one of the criticisms of cervical disc replacement, is no scatter. You can actually image behind this disc. So you're going to have a disc out that's kind of got a new story. From a results standpoint, as good or better than the other discs. From an imaging standpoint, unbelievable. All right, well, let's talk about the bad, and I know it's going to sound like I'm ragging on medical tourism that goes to Europe, and in fact, I am. Richard knows this case. This was a fellow who went to Europe and was drawn there by some marketing of what's kind of come onto the scene as a new medical tourism place. We kind of knew the standard ones. This guy came up about a year or two ago and started marketing a disc called the ESP disc, which, like the M6, has got the polycarbonate polyurethane core, so it's a compressible disc. It's a story. They say you can't get it anywhere else, so you've got to come to Europe to get it. Well, you still have to do good surgery, and the disc is a little finicky. It's big, and it requires, technically, I've seen it done outside the U.S., a fair amount of skill. So you go to Europe, you get this done, you come back, and what do you see? You see a disc rotated out in front. Now, basically, at this point, they're not going to take care of you in Europe. So, you know, Richard and I have talked about this case and have made some recommendations, and I don't know if the patient has followed through. He hadn't contacted us again for our recommendations. But, you know, technically this disc was oversized. There was an inadequate posterior release. And when patients go to Europe, the doctors wash their hands a little bit. Interesting enough, Australia was smarter than we are, because this guy comes to the U.S. and has seminars for patients, and they do all this marketing, and they have patient handlers that bring them to the clinic in Germany. Well, he did that once in Australia, and the second time that he came back, their federales stopped him at the border and sent him back because someone turned him in for practicing medicine in Australia without a license. We're not smart enough to do that in the U.S. So as far as I know, he still does that here. All right, here's the ugly. Same clinic. This is that same ESP compressible disc, and this is a patient also that I saw before this, did not recommend this procedure, and this looks like a raging case of osteolysis. Well, I've seen now 6 cases of osteolysis, 2 lumbar, 4 cervical, all with compressible discs, either this ESP or the M6, and all in male. The 2 that I have revised, both have grown. It's not called P. acnes anymore, it's C. acnes. And if you see this and you culture it, you have to tell your lab, you have to let it brew for 2 to 3 weeks. It won't be positive at 48 hours. So, and this is a disaster. This guy is going to come back. He lives in the East Coast, and we're going to be revising him in the next month. But it's a big deal. Finally, I had this slide a year or 2 ago. This is an artificial disc, but I think, you know, with respect to the guys, I know Mick's one of them who's doing legitimate research into stem cell disc regeneration. I don't know about your community. There are clinics still popping up all over the place, mostly pain docs, and really, I don't think we've made any progress in terms of disc regeneration over the last year. So I put a question mark next to that. We don't know whether it's going to be good, bad, or ugly yet. So, thank you. Wow.